The crackle of gunfire split the evening air as Teresa Grayson ducked behind the remains of her father's barn, clutching her mother's locket to her chest. The outlaws who'd killed her parents had returned, and this time they aimed to finish what they'd started by burning down what little remained of the Grayson homestead. The year was 1876, and in the unforgiving expanse of the Colorado Territory, justice was often something you had to deliver yourself if you lived long enough to do so. Teresa had survived 3 months on her own since burying her parents. At 22, she was no stranger to hard work, having helped run the small cattle ranch since she was old enough to ride. But defending it alone had proven nearly impossible. The Blackwell Gang wanted their land for the water access, and they weren't above murder to get it. The barn erupted in flames as Teresa slipped away through the tall grass. She'd have to circle back later if there was anything left to salvage. Her horse, Penny, was hidden in the creek bed a quarter-mile away. If she could reach her, she might make it to town by dawn. A figure moved in her peripheral vision. Teresa froze, her hand moving to the small revolver tucked in her skirt pocket. She'd never shot a man before, but tonight might change that. "Madam," a deep voice called softly, "don't shoot. I'm here to help." A tall man emerged from the shadows, hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm. He wore the dust of the trail and had the lean, weathered look of someone who spent most of his life outdoors. His eyes, sharp and alert even in the dim light, caught the distant glow of the burning barn. "Who are you?" Teresa demanded, not lowering her gun. "Cole Quincy," he answered, keeping his distance. "I was tracking the Blackwell Gang when I saw the fire. This your place?" Teresa nodded, still wary. "What's left of it? They killed my parents 3 months ago. Now they're back to finish the job." Cole's expression hardened. "I've been after them for 8 months. They killed my brother near Santa Fe." He glanced toward the burning barn. "We should move. They'll be searching for you once they realize you're not inside." Teresa hesitated only a moment before nodding. "I have a horse hidden nearby." They moved silently through the prairie grass, the smell of smoke fading as they put distance between themselves and the homestead. Teresa led the way to where Penny waited patiently, right where she'd left her. "We need to get you somewhere safe," Cole said, eyeing the horizon. "Town's too obvious. They'll look for you there first." "There's an abandoned mining cabin about 3 miles north," Teresa suggested. "My father used to take me hunting there. No one's used it in years." Cole nodded. "You ride." "I'll follow on foot and cover our tracks." "You don't have a horse." "Lost him crossing the river yesterday. Been on foot since." There was no self-pity in his voice, just a statement of fact. Teresa hesitated, then extended her hand. "Get on. Penny can carry us both as far as the cabin." The ride was tense and silent. Teresa felt the solid presence of Cole behind her, his arm lightly around her waist for balance. Despite the circumstances, she found herself grateful for the human contact. 3 months of solitude had worn on her more than she cared to admit. The cabin was just as Teresa remembered, small, weathered, but still standing against the elements. Cole checked the perimeter before letting Teresa enter, then secured the door behind them. "It's not much," Teresa said, lighting a small oil lamp she found on a dusty shelf. "But it should keep us hidden until morning." Cole nodded, removing his hat and running a hand through his dark hair. In the lamplight, Teresa could see him clearly for the first time. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 28 or 30, with intelligent blue eyes and a strong jawline covered in several days' worth of stubble. A long scar ran from his right temple to his cheekbone, but it did nothing to diminish his handsome features. "How long have you been tracking them?" Teresa asked, settling on a rickety chair. "Since last December. My brother David and I ran a small freight business out of Santa Fe. The Blackwell Gang hit one of our wagons. David tried to stop them. Cole's jaw tightened. He was getting married that spring. Teresa felt a pang of shared grief. I'm sorry. Cole nodded, accepting her condolence without further comment. What's your plan, Miss Grayson, once morning comes? Teresa, she corrected. And I don't have much of a plan. Rebuild, I suppose. It's my land. I won't let them take it. Admirable, Cole said, a hint of something like respect crossing his features, but difficult to do alone. I don't have much choice. It's all I have left. Cole considered her for a long moment. The way I see it, we have the same problem. I want justice for my brother. You want your land safe. Maybe we can help each other. Teresa studied him carefully. In the Wild West, trust wasn't given easily, it had to be earned, but something in Cole's direct gaze told her he was a man of his word. What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Quincy? Cole, he corrected with the ghost of a smile. And I'm proposing we work together. I know how Blackwell operates. You know this territory. Together, we might stand a chance of ending this. Teresa considered his offer. The prospect of facing the gang alone had haunted her for months. Having an ally, especially one who seemed capable and determined, changed things significantly. All right, she agreed finally. Partners, then. They spent the night taking turns keeping watch. When morning came, they surveyed the damage to Teresa's homestead from a safe distance. The barn was gone, reduced to charred timbers and ash. The small house her father had built remained standing, though the windows had been smashed and the door hung crookedly on its hinges. They'll be back, Cole said quietly. They want to make sure you're gone or dead. Teresa nodded, fighting back tears. Then we need to be ready when they come. Over the next 2 weeks, Teresa and Cole worked tirelessly to prepare. During the day, they repaired what they could of the house, always keeping a careful watch. At night, they returned to the mining cabin, where Cole insisted Teresa sleep while he kept guard. They learned each other's stories in bits and pieces. Teresa told him about growing up on the ranch, about her mother's quiet strength, and her father's dreams of expanding their small herd. Cole shared tales of the freight business he'd built with his brother, of the routes they'd established through territories where law was still more concept than reality. We should reinforce these windows, Cole said one afternoon, examining the damaged frames. And I'm thinking we could set up some early warning systems around the perimeter. Teresa watched him work, admiring his methodical approach and quiet competence. In just 2 weeks, Cole had become a steady presence she found herself relying on more than she'd expected. He was unfailingly respectful, never treating her as anything less than an equal partner in their venture. Where did you learn all this? She asked as he fashioned a tripwire alarm using tin cans and baling wire. Cole's hands paused briefly. Army. Served 5 years before David and I started the freight business. Picked up a few tricks. One evening, as they prepared to head back to the cabin, Cole stopped suddenly, staring at the front of the house. What is it? Teresa asked, instantly alert. Your porch, he said slowly. It needs something. Teresa followed his gaze, confused. The small porch was one of the few parts of the house relatively untouched by the attack. What do you mean? Cole seemed lost in thought. My mother had a porch swing. Used to sit on it every evening watching the sunset. A smile touched his lips, softening his features. First thing my father built when they settled in Kansas. Teresa tried to picture it. I've never had one. Every home should have a porch swing, Cole said with unexpected conviction. Gives you a place to think, to breathe. To remember what you're fighting for. The next morning, Teresa woke to find Cole gone from his usual post outside the cabin door. Panic seized her until she spotted a note on the table. Gone to town for supplies. Back by noon. Stay hidden. See, true to his word, Cole returned before midday, his arms laden with lumber, tools, and supplies. "What's all this?" Teresa asked, helping him unload. "Thought we could use a few improvements at the ranch," he said vaguely. "And I picked up some information in town." The Blackwell Gang was spotted heading north toward Wyoming territory. "Gives us some breathing room." For the next 3 days, Cole disappeared for hours each afternoon, telling Teresa he was setting up additional security measures around the property. She didn't question him, trusting his judgment and grateful for his help. On the 4th day, as evening approached, Cole led Teresa to the front porch of her house. "Close your eyes," he said, a rare hint of excitement in his voice. Teresa raised an eyebrow but complied. She heard Cole's boots on the wooden boards, felt him take her hand to guide her forward. "All right," he said. "You can look now." Teresa opened her eyes to find a beautifully crafted porch swing hanging from the roof overhang. The wood was smooth and polished, the chains secure and even. A small cushion made from what looked like a repurposed saddle blanket covered the seat. "Cole," she breathed, touching the swing with wonder. "When did you do this?" "Been working on it when you thought I was setting traps," he admitted, a touch of color rising on his weathered cheeks. "Figured you could use something nice amid all this trouble." Teresa felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the late afternoon sun. Without thinking, she reached up and placed a gentle kiss on Cole's cheek. "Thank you," she said softly. "It's perfect." That evening they sat together on the swing, watching the sun set over the plains. It was the first time since her parents' deaths that Teresa felt something like peace. "My mother would sit on her swing every evening," Cole said quietly. "Said it was her way of taking stock of the day." "The good and the bad." Teresa nodded, understanding. "Today has more good than bad, I think." Cole's hand found hers on the swing between them, his calloused fingers gentle as they closed over hers. "Yes," he agreed, "it does." That night marked a shift in their relationship. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that their partnership had grown into something deeper. 2 days later, word reached them that the Blackwell Gang had returned to the area. Cole doubled the watches, and they prepared for the inevitable confrontation. "We should get word to the marshal in town," Teresa suggested as they checked their ammunition. Cole shook his head. "Marshal Williams is in Blackwell's pocket. Why do you think no one investigated your parents' murder properly?" Teresa's hand stilled. "You're certain?" "Saw them talking in town when I went for supplies. Too friendly for my liking." Cole's expression was grim. "We're on our own with this." The attack came at dawn 3 days later. Teresa woke to the sound of Cole's low voice. "They're coming. 5 riders from the south." Teresa grabbed her rifle and joined Cole at the reinforced window. In the early morning light, she could make out the riders approaching across the open ground. "I count 5, she confirmed, "but Blackwell's gang is 7 strong." "The other 2 must be circling around," Cole muttered. "Just like I thought they would." He gave her a quick smile. "Good thing we prepared for that." The first shots came as the riders reached the edge of the property. Cole and Teresa returned fire from their fortified positions, forcing the attackers to scatter and seek cover. "Remember," Cole said between shots, "we just need to hold them off until a loud explosion cut him off as one of their traps triggered on the far side of the property." Cole grinned. "That'll be the other 2. The firefight continued for nearly an hour. Teresa proved herself an excellent shot, winging one of the attackers and forcing him to retreat. Cole's military experience showed in his calm, strategic approach to the defense. "Blackwell's getting desperate," Cole observed as the attacker's movements became more erratic. "He's not used to targets that fight back effectively." Just as Cole predicted, the gang eventually withdrew, carrying their wounded with them. As the dust settled, Teresa and Cole cautiously surveyed the damage. "They'll be back," Cole said, reloading his revolver. "But they'll think twice about a frontal assault next time." "What's our next move?" Teresa asked, wiping sweat from her brow. Cole was quiet for a moment, considering. "We need to take the fight to them, learn where they're camped and hit them when they're not expecting it. How do we find them?" "I've got an idea about that," Cole said. "But first, let's fix that window they shot out." That evening, as had become their custom, they sat together on the porch swing. Despite the morning's violence, there was something comforting about the gentle rocking motion and the shared silence. "I never thought I'd feel safe here again," Teresa admitted quietly. "After my parents." Cole's hand found hers. "You're stronger than you know, Teresa." She turned to look at him, studying the profile that had become so familiar in such a short time. "So are you." "Most men would have given up this hunt months ago." "Some things are worth seeing through to the end," Cole said, his eyes meeting hers. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken feelings. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Cole leaned in. Teresa met him halfway, their lips touching in a gentle kiss that quickly deepened with the force of emotions they'd both been holding back. When they finally parted, Teresa rested her forehead against his. "I didn't expect this," she whispered. "Not now. Not with everything else happening." Cole's hand came up to cup her cheek. Life doesn't always wait for convenient times. The next morning, Cole rode into town with a plan to find information about Blackwell's whereabouts. Teresa stayed behind, reinforcing their defenses and keeping watch. He returned late in the afternoon, his expression troubled. "What is it?" Teresa asked as she helped him unsaddle his borrowed horse. "Found out where they're camped about 15 miles northwest, near Copper Creek." Cole secured the saddle in the barn, "But I also heard something else. There's a land auction scheduled for next week." "Your land is listed." Teresa froze. "That's impossible. I have the deed." "Marshall Williams filed papers claiming the property was abandoned after your parents' deaths, since you never formally registered their passing or your inheritance." Cole's jaw tightened. "It's not legal, but with the marshal involved, they can make it look legitimate." Teresa felt the blood drain from her face. "So even if we drive off Blackwell, I could still lose everything." "Not if we can prove you've been here all along and expose Williams' corruption." Cole took her hands in his. "But we need to deal with Blackwell first. Once he's gone, we can focus on the legal battle." They spent the evening planning their approach to the Blackwell camp. Cole drew maps in the dirt floor of the barn, explaining the terrain and outlining their strategy. "We'll leave before dawn," he concluded. "Hit them while they're still sleeping off their whiskey." Teresa nodded, committing the plan to memory. Later, as they sat on the porch swing watching the stars appear, she voiced the fear that had been growing all evening. "What if something goes wrong tomorrow?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. "Then we adjust. That's all anyone can do, and after," she pressed. "If we succeed," Cole turned to face her, his expression serious in the fading light. "What do you want to happen after, Teresa?" The directness of his question caught her off guard. She looked away, gathering her thoughts. "I want my land secure. I want to rebuild what my parents started." She paused, then met his gaze steadily. "And I don't want to do it alone anymore." Cole's expression softened. He reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering on her cheek. "Then you won't be alone," he said simply. They left before first light, riding double on the borrowed horse. The journey to Copper Creek took them through rugged terrain that grew increasingly familiar to Cole as they approached. "I tracked them through here 2 months ago," he whispered as they dismounted and secured their horse in a sheltered gully. "Lost their trail at the creek." They proceeded on foot, moving silently through the pre-dawn darkness. As they crested a small rise, Cole stopped and pointed. Below them, nestled in a protected hollow, 5 tents clustered around a dying campfire. 2 horses were picketed nearby, with more visible in a makeshift corral farther back. "I count 2 men on watch," Teresa murmured, scanning the camp. "One by the horses, one near that large tent." Cole nodded approvingly at her observation. "Blackwell always takes the largest tent. The rest of them will be sleeping off last night's drinking." Their plan was simple but risky. Disable the sentries quietly, then use the element of surprise to force Blackwell's surrender. Cole had insisted they try to take him alive if possible, both to stand trial for his crimes, and to ensure he revealed the full extent of Marshal Williams' corruption. Moving with the stealth of experienced hunters, they circled the camp. Cole approached the guard by the horses while Teresa crept toward the man near the large tent. Years of hunting with her father had taught her how to move silently through underbrush. The guard never heard her coming. A quick blow with the butt of her rifle rendered him unconscious. She bound and gagged him, then looked up to see Cole giving her the signal that he'd successfully dealt with the other sentry. They converged on Blackwell's tent. Cole held up 3 fingers, counting down silently. On 0, they burst through the tent flap, weapons raised. Inside, a large man lay sprawled on a cot, snoring loudly. 2 empty whiskey bottles lay on the ground beside him. Cole pressed his revolver to the man's temple. "Wake up, Blackwell," he said coldly. "Your murdering days are over." The man startled awake, his bloodshot eyes widening at the sight of the gun. Recognition dawned slowly on his face as he looked at Cole. "Quincy," he growled. "Should have known you wouldn't quit." "You killed my brother," Cole said, his voice steady despite the emotion Teresa could see in his eyes. "And her parents, and who knows how many others." Blackwell's gaze shifted to Teresa, his expression darkening. "Grayson's girl thought we'd finished you with the barn." "You thought wrong," Teresa replied, her rifle aimed steadily at his chest. Outside, they could hear stirring from the other tents as the rest of the gang began to wake. Cole grabbed Blackwell by the collar, hauling him to his feet. "Call them off," he ordered. "Tell your men to surrender." Blackwell laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. "Or what? You'll shoot me." "Then you'll never make it out of this camp alive." "We don't need to kill you," Teresa said, her voice colder than she'd ever heard it. "Just ensure you never walk again." She lowered her rifle slightly, aiming at his knee. "Your choice." Something in her tone must have convinced him she meant it. Blackwell's expression faltered. "Jed," he shouted. "All of you, throw down your weapons. We're surrounded." It wasn't true, of course, but the confusion of being woken suddenly and their leader's captured state was enough to make the remaining gang members comply. Within minutes, Cole and Teresa had the entire Blackwell gang bound and secured. "What now?" Teresa asked as they stood over their prisoners. "Now we take them to the territorial marshal in Denver," Cole said. "Williams won't be able to interfere with federal jurisdiction." The journey to Denver took 3 days, with Cole and Teresa taking turns watching their prisoners. Upon arrival, they presented their evidence to the territorial marshal, including a written confession from Blackwell implicating Marshal Williams in multiple land seizures throughout the county. "The territorial governor will want to speak with both of you," the marshal told them after hearing their full story. "This corruption ring appears to extend further than we initially suspected." Their testimony led to the arrest of Marshal Williams and several county officials. The illegal land auction was canceled, and Teresa received official recognition of her rightful ownership of the Grayson Ranch. 2 weeks later, they returned to the ranch, both exhausted but triumphant. The house stood waiting for them, damaged but intact, a symbol of resilience that matched their own. "What will you do now?" Teresa asked Cole as they unsaddled their horses in the barn. The question had hung between them throughout their time in Denver, neither quite ready to voice their hopes for the future. Cole took his time answering, carefully hanging up the saddle before turning to face her. "That depends," he said finally. "On what?" "On whether there's still a place for me here." His blue eyes held hers, vulnerable in a way she'd rarely seen. "With you." Teresa crossed the space between them, her heart beating rapidly in her chest. "There's always been a place for you here, Cole. From the moment you helped me escape that night." His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. "I never planned to stay in one place this long," he admitted, "but now I can't imagine being anywhere else." "Then stay," Teresa said simply. "Help me rebuild this place, make it ours." Cole's answer was a kiss that held all the promise of their future together. The rebuilding of the Grayson Ranch, now the Grayson Quincy Ranch, began immediately. Word of their triumph over the Blackwell Gang spread throughout the territory, bringing unexpected support from neighbors who'd been too frightened to stand against the outlaws before. By midsummer, the barn had been rebuilt, stronger than before. The house repairs were completed, with Cole adding improvements that combined his practical experience with Teresa's vision for her childhood home. Their small herd of cattle began to grow as calves were born, and new stock purchased from the proceeds of the reward money for Blackwell's capture. Every evening, without fail, they would sit together on the porch swing Cole had built. Sometimes they talked about the day's work or plans for the future. Other times they simply sat in comfortable silence, watching the spectacular Colorado sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "I've been thinking," Cole said one such evening in late August, his arm around Teresa's shoulders as the swing gently rocked. "A dangerous pastime," she teased, leaning into his embrace. He smiled, the expression coming more easily to him now than when they'd first met. "Perhaps. But I've been thinking we should make this official." Teresa turned to look at him, her heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out a small band of gold. It was simple but beautifully crafted, with delicate engravings along the edges. "I mean that I love you, Teresa Grayson. These past months have shown me what it means to have a home again, to have someone worth fighting for." His voice grew husky with emotion. "I want to build a life with you if you'll have me." Teresa felt tears spring to her eyes as she looked at the ring, then back to Cole's hopeful face. "When did you get this? In Denver? Had it made special?" A touch of uncertainty crossed his features. "Is it all right?" In answer, Teresa threw her arms around his neck, nearly tipping the swing in her enthusiasm. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "Yes, it's all right. And yes, I'll marry you, Cole Quincy." They were married in October when the aspen trees turned the mountainsides to gold. The ceremony was small but joyful, attended by neighbors and new friends they'd made during their fight for justice. The territorial marshal came from Denver, bringing news that the last of the corruption cases had been successfully prosecuted. Life settled into a rhythm of hard work and quiet joy. They expanded the ranch operations, breeding horses alongside their growing cattle herd. Cole's experience with freight operations proved invaluable as they established shipping arrangements with buyers as far away as Kansas City. The following spring brought new beginnings in more ways than one. Teresa discovered she was expecting their first child, news that left Cole speechless with wonder and Teresa laughing at his stunned expression. "A baby," he kept repeating, his hand gently resting on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." As Teresa's pregnancy progressed, Cole became even more protective, insisting on handling the more strenuous ranch tasks himself. He also embarked on a series of home improvements, determined to make everything perfect for their growing family. "The baby won't care if the kitchen floor has a slight tilt," Teresa pointed out one afternoon as Cole measured and remeasured the boards he was preparing to replace. "I'll care," he responded with such seriousness that Teresa couldn't help but smile. Their daughter, Emily Rose Quincy, was born on a crisp January morning in 1878. She had her mother's dark hair and her father's blue eyes, a combination that Cole declared perfect in every way. One of Cole's first projects after Emily's birth was crafting a smaller version of the porch swing, designed to hang beside their larger one. "For when she's older," he explained, though Teresa suspected it was as much for him to rock their daughter to sleep while enjoying the evening air. Life wasn't always easy. The harsh Colorado winters, occasional drought summers, and normal challenges of ranch life tested them regularly. But together, they faced each obstacle with the same determination that had brought them through their fight against Blackwell. By Emily's third birthday, the ranch had nearly tripled in size and profitability. They employed several hands to help with the expanding operation, and had added a second story to the house to accommodate their growing family. Teresa was expecting their second child in the spring. One evening, as snow fell gently outside, Cole found Teresa sitting on the indoor swing he'd built in the front room for the winter months when the porch was inaccessible. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, joining her and taking her hand in his. Teresa smiled, looking around at the home they'd built together. "I was thinking about that first night you found me, running from the burning barn, how scared I was, how alone I felt." Cole nodded, remembering. "You didn't seem scared. You seemed ready to shoot me if I made one wrong move." She laughed softly. "I was terrified, but I couldn't show it." Her expression grew more serious. "I never imagined then that losing everything would somehow lead to gaining so much more." Cole's arm tightened around her shoulders. "I set out looking for revenge," he admitted. "Instead, I found something to live for." Little Emily toddled into the room, clutching her favorite wooden horse that Cole had carved for her. Without hesitation, she climbed onto the swing between her parents, settling happily into the space that seemed made just for her. "Swing, Papa," she commanded, her small face alight with joy. Cole obliged, setting the swing in gentle motion. As Teresa watched her husband and daughter together, she felt a fullness in her heart that sometimes still surprised her with its intensity. The years continued to pass, bringing changes both expected and surprising. Their second child, a son they named David after Cole's brother, arrived healthy and strong. 2 years later, twins Margaret and Michael completed their family, bringing both joy and exhaustion in equal measure. The ranch prospered under their joint management, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. Cole's innovative breeding techniques and Teresa's shrewd business sense proved a powerful combination. They expanded the main house again to accommodate their growing family, but some things remained constant. The original porch swing still hung in its place of honor, joined now by the smaller one Cole had built for Emily, which the younger children now used. As the children grew, they learned the story of how their parents met, though certain details were modified depending on their ages. They knew about the brave stand against outlaws, about justice prevailing, about the rebuilding of a home and the forging of a family. "Tell us again about the swing, Papa." 7-year-old Margaret would often request at bedtime, her eyes already heavy with approaching sleep. And Cole would smile, catching Teresa's eye across the room as he began the familiar tale. "Well, you see, a home isn't really a home without a place to watch the sun go down and count your blessings." On their 20th anniversary, Cole surprised Teresa with a completely refurbished porch swing. using the original chains but crafting a new seat and back with intricate carvings depicting scenes from their life together: the ranch, their children, the mountains they both loved. "It's beautiful," Teresa whispered, tracing the detailed work with her fingers. "When did you find time to do this?" "I have my secrets," Cole said with a wink, pulling her close for a kiss. That evening, as had become their unbreakable ritual, they sat together on the swing. Their eldest, Emily, was away at school in Denver, studying to become a teacher. David, 16 and already showing his father's talent with horses, had taken the younger twins fishing at the creek. 20 years, Teresa mused, leaning her head on Cole's shoulder. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you came riding to my rescue." "As I recall, you were doing a fine job of rescuing yourself," Cole replied with a chuckle. "I just helped even the odds a bit." She smiled, remembering. "We've come a long way from that burning barn." Cole nodded, his hand finding hers as naturally as breathing. "And I'd do it all again in a heartbeat." They rocked in comfortable silence as the sun began its descent behind the mountains, painting the sky in colors no artist could truly capture. The gentle creaking of the swing mingled with distant laughter as their children returned from their fishing expedition. Teresa watched as Cole's face lit up at the sight of them, his love for their family written plainly in every line of his expression. The hardships they'd faced, the obstacles they'd overcome, all of it had led to this moment, this life they'd built together. "Thank you," she said softly. Cole turned to her, a question in his eyes. "For what?" "For the swing." Teresa smiled, gesturing around them at the ranch, their home, their life. "For everything." Cole's answer was to draw her closer, his kiss as tender as it had been on that first evening they'd shared on the swing he'd built for her. Around them, their world continued, children calling, cattle lowing in the distance, the business of the ranch proceeding apace. But for that moment, it was just the two of them, swinging gently as the day came to a close, just as it had been in the beginning, just as it would be for all the days to come. As the children grew older and began lives of their own, the ranch entered a new phase. Emily married a young lawyer from Denver and settled there, though she visited often. David took over more of the daily operations, showing the same dedication and work ethic his parents had instilled in him. The twins, now in their late teens, were finishing their education, Margaret with dreams of becoming a doctor, Michael with plans to expand the ranch's horse breeding program. Through it all, Cole and Teresa's partnership remained the steady foundation upon which everything else was built. They weathered the changes together, the joy of welcoming grandchildren, the sorrow of saying goodbye to old friends, the pride of watching their children forge their own paths. One constant remained. Each evening, no matter the weather or the season, they would find their way to the porch swing. In summer's heat, or protected from winter's chill in the indoor swing Cole had built, they maintained this ritual that had begun in those first uncertain days of their relationship. "I think Margaret's serious about that young doctor from Colorado Springs," Teresa remarked one evening as they watched the sunset, her silver-streaked hair catching the dying light. Cole nodded, his hand covering hers on the swing between them. "He seems a good man, respectful, hard-working." "You said the same about Emily's husband," Teresa teased, "and you scowled for weeks before their wedding." "A father's prerogative," Cole defended himself with a smile that had only grown more handsome with age. The years had etched lines around his eyes and mouth, testament to a life lived fully in sun and wind, laughter and occasional sorrow. "Will you build them a porch swing for a wedding gift?" Teresa asked. "Like you did for Emily and Thomas?" Cole considered this, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "If she wants one, It's become something of a family tradition, hasn't it? Indeed it had. The swing he'd built for their eldest daughter now hung on her Denver home's front porch. Neighbors throughout the county had admired Cole's craftsmanship over the years, and he'd made similar gifts for close friends and family on special occasions. You remember telling me once that every home should have a porch swing? Teresa asked, leaning into his familiar warmth as the evening cooled. I remember everything about those days, Cole replied softly. How could I forget? They changed the entire course of my life. Their quiet moment was interrupted by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. David rode into view, returning from checking the north pasture fences. Everything all right? Cole called as their son dismounted. David grinned, the expression so like his father's that it sometimes startled Teresa. More than all right. That new breeding pair you brought in last month. The mare's expecting. Should foal in the spring. Cole nodded approvingly. Good news. We'll need to prepare the south paddock. Already started, David assured him. Michael's drawing up plans to expand the stable too. Says we'll need more room if the breeding program continues to grow at this rate. They discussed ranch business for a few minutes before David excused himself to tend to his horse. As he walked away, Teresa caught Cole watching him with unmistakable pride. He reminds me of you when we first met, she observed. Same determined stride. Cole chuckled. Let's hope he finds his happiness a bit less dramatically than I found mine. I don't know, Teresa mused. There's something to be said for a little drama. Makes for a better story to tell the grandchildren. Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Cole grew unusually quiet. Teresa, attuned to his moods after decades of marriage, noticed immediately. What's on your mind? She asked, brushing out her hair at the dressing table. Cole sat on the edge of their bed, his expression thoughtful. I was thinking about David taking over more of the ranch operations, about Emily in Denver with her family, the twins making their own plans. Teresa set down her brush and turned to face him. Are you worried? Not worried exactly. Cole struggled to find the right words. More, reflecting on how quickly it all passes, how different things are now from when we started. Teresa crossed to sit beside him, taking his hand in hers. Different, yes, but better in so many ways, don't you think? Cole's serious expression melted into a smile as he looked at her. Infinitely better. I just sometimes wonder what's next for us. The children are grown, or nearly so. The ranch runs smoother than we ever dreamed possible. Are you getting restless, Cole Quincy? Teresa asked, only half joking. Looking for another outlaw gang to chase down, he laughed, pulling her close. God, no. One lifetime of that was quite enough. His expression grew more serious. But maybe we could do some of that traveling we've talked about over the years, see some of those places we've only read about. Teresa considered this. They'd occasionally discussed visiting places beyond Colorado, perhaps San Francisco, or even back east to New York or Boston. The demands of the ranch and raising children had always made such plans seem distant possibilities rather than realistic goals. I think I'd like that, she said finally. Perhaps when Margaret and Michael finish their schooling, David's more than capable of managing things here for a while. Cole nodded, a new light entering his eyes. We could start with San Francisco. You've always wanted to see the ocean. And you've talked about visiting your Army friends in St. Louis, Teresa added, warming to the idea. They continued planning late into the night, mapping out potential journeys with the enthusiasm of people half their age. By the time they finally settled down to sleep, a new chapter of their life together had begun to take shape in their minds. Spring brought Margaret's engagement to Dr. James Wilson of Colorado Springs, as Teresa had predicted. The wedding was planned for the following autumn, giving the family time to prepare a celebration worthy of their beloved daughter. One afternoon, Cole disappeared into his workshop, a spacious addition to the barn where he crafted furniture and special projects. He'd become known throughout the region for his fine woodworking, particularly his specialty, porch swings designed to last generations. "No peeking," he warned Teresa when she brought him lunch. "Margaret's wedding gift is underway." Teresa respected his creative space, but couldn't help noticing the unusual amount of material he'd gathered. "That seems like an awful lot of wood for one swing," she observed. Cole merely smiled mysteriously. "Who said anything about just one?" The mystery was revealed 2 weeks later when Cole led Teresa, blindfolded, onto their expanded back porch that overlooked the mountains. "Can I look now?" she asked, feeling the warm summer breeze on her face. "Now," Cole confirmed, removing the blindfold. Teresa gasped. Before her stood not one but 3 magnificent swings, arranged in a semicircle to take advantage of the breathtaking view. The center swing was larger, clearly designed for 2 people, while the flanking swings were single-person size. "Cole," she breathed, taking in the beautiful craftsmanship. Each swing featured different carvings, mountain scenes on one, wildflowers on another, and on the center swing, an intricate rendering of their ranch as it had appeared when they first rebuilt it together. "I thought it might be nice to have a special place for when all the children and grandchildren visit," Cole explained, a touch of uncertainty in his voice. "A place where we can all watch the sunset together, even as the family grows." Tears welled in Teresa's eyes as she turned to embrace him. "It's perfect," she whispered against his chest. "Absolutely perfect." Margaret's wedding that autumn was everything they could have hoped for, a joyful celebration that brought together family, friends, and neighbors from miles around. As promised, Cole presented the newlyweds with their own porch swing, specially designed to complement the doctor's Colorado Springs home. "It's a family tradition," he explained to his new son-in-law. "Started the day I built the first one for your mother-in-law, Dr. Wilson," already well aware of the story's significance, accepted the gift with genuine appreciation. "Margaret has told me how important the evening swing ritual is to your family," he said. "We'll honor that tradition in our home as well." Following the wedding, Cole and Teresa embarked on their first extended journey away from the ranch, leaving David in charge for 2 months while they traveled to San Francisco. The trip was everything they'd imagined: the wonder of seeing the vast Pacific Ocean, exploring the bustling city, and experiencing sights so different from their Colorado home. Yet each evening, no matter where they stayed, they found themselves seeking out a porch, balcony, or garden bench where they could sit together as the day ended. "It's not quite the same without our swing," Teresa remarked one evening as they sat on their hotel balcony overlooking the bay. Cole took her hand, his expression contemplative. "Some habits become part of who you are. I find myself listening for that familiar creak of the chains, feeling that particular sway." Teresa nodded, understanding completely. "We'll appreciate it all the more when we return home." Their homecoming was celebrated with a family dinner that filled the house with laughter and stories. As the evening drew to a close, Cole and Teresa excused themselves and made their way to the back porch, where their swing waited. "Welcome home," David called after them with a knowing smile. He, more than anyone, understood the significance of their evening ritual. Settling into the familiar embrace of their swing, Teresa sighed contentedly. "As wonderful as our adventures were, there's something about this that nothing else can match." Cole's arm tightened around her shoulders as they gazed out at the land they'd stewarded together for so many years. "It's where our story truly began," he said simply. "Where we built something lasting. the family continued to grow and change. Michael married a local rancher's daughter, combining their properties and expanding the Quincy Grayson ranch operations further. Margaret and her doctor husband divided their time between Colorado Springs and the ranch, eventually building a small house on the property for extended summer visits with their children. Through it all, Cole and Teresa maintained their evening ritual on the porch swing. It became so well known that visitors knew not to interrupt that sacred time unless absolutely necessary. Grandchildren learned that, after dinner, Grandma and Grandpa needed their swing time, though they were always welcome to join for a short while before bedtime. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the entire extended family gathered at the ranch for a celebration that lasted 3 days. Emily came from Denver with her husband, children, and grandchildren. David and his wife hosted, with help from Michael and Margaret's families. Even distant relatives and old friends made the journey to honor the couple whose love story had become something of a legend in the territory. The highlight of the celebration was the unveiling of a gift from all 4 children, a new porch swing crafted by the finest woodworker in Denver, under David's exacting supervision, featuring a carved timeline of Cole and Teresa's life together. Every significant moment was represented, from their first meeting during the Blackwell Gang attack to the births of their children and grandchildren. "We couldn't think of anything more fitting," Emily explained as her parents examined the beautiful piece. "Everything important in our family has happened with that swing as witness." That evening, after the guests had departed or settled into various rooms and cabins on the property, Cole and Teresa sat alone on their new anniversary swing. Despite his 78 years, Cole's arm around Teresa's shoulders remained strong and steady. 50 years, Teresa marveled, her voice soft in the gathering dusk. "Sometimes I can hardly believe it." Cole nodded, his silver hair catching the last rays of sunlight. "Best 50 years any man could ask for." They rocked gently, the familiar motion as comforting as ever. Below them, the ranch spread out in all directions, the legacy they'd built together from the ashes of destruction and loss. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't tracked the Blackwell Gang to my property that night?" Teresa asked, a question she'd considered many times over the decades. Cole was quiet for a long moment, considering. "I believe some things are meant to be," he said finally. "I might have found you by a different path, or you might have found me, but I think we were always meant to find each other." Teresa smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. "I think so too." As night fell completely, they remained on the swing, speaking occasionally but mostly content in their shared silence. This was the gift they'd given each other from the very beginning, a moment of peace at day's end, a chance to reflect on all they'd built together, and the promise of another day to come. The porch swing Cole had built so many years ago had become much more than a simple piece of furniture. It was the physical embodiment of their enduring love, steady, reliable, offering comfort through all seasons of life. And as they gently rocked together under the vast Colorado sky, Teresa knew with absolute certainty that of all the many blessings in her life, none compared to that first evening when a determined cowboy built her a porch swing and watched her smile each evening from it.